Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are dialing in from today. Welcome to the fourth day in our Customer Showcase Week, forming part of EA Jumpstart 2025. My name is Joy. I'm RDoc's Global Director of Business Development, and I am honoured to be your facilitator and, importantly, timekeeper for this session. If you've joined our earlier sessions this week, you'll have heard from Riot Games, Jack in the Box, and Tenneco. And today we are hugely excited to welcome Folksam, a century-old insurance giant. Folksam are doing brilliant, brilliant things, and they're having a seriously positive impact on their customers. So we are in for a treat. With that, to our agenda. So I will be introducing you to our guest speaker, and then I'll pass over to our host for what promises to be an insightful session. We've allowed time at the end for your questions. So you'll see the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please submit questions and we'll do our very, very best to answer each one. We really want a noisy audience, so please do put your thoughts and your comments and your questions in the chat. We want to get through as much as we can. There should also be a resources section at the bottom of your screen where you'll see preloaded content that relates to Folksam's story. So without further ado, it is time to meet our experts. Firstly, a big welcome to Alexander Holden from Folksam. Alexander has over a decade of experience bringing expertise from leading Nordic companies, including Dustin Group and Swedbank. Also introducing our host, Sean Gibson, Senior Enterprise Architect at RDoc. Sean's leadership in Team Amplify, RDoc's EA Centre of Excellence, and we really do mean excellence, helps organisations navigate digital transformation while fostering knowledge sharing and innovation. So before I pass over to Sean, Alexander, welcome. Could you give us a brief overview of Folksam for our listeners?
Thank you for having me. Absolutely. We are within the pension and insurance industry. We have $19 billion in managed capital, or 900 billion SEK. We roughly have 3 million customers. We only operate in the Swedish market, and 3,000 employees, whereas 6 enterprise architects. So we are one of the largest pension and insurance companies in Sweden.
They are some big numbers. Thank you, Alexander. We are so excited that you're here to share your EA success journey. And with that, I think it's already time for me to be quiet, to keep an eye on the clock, and to hand over to Sean for the main event.
Thank you, Joy. So just to say, we're happy to have you join us today, Alexander, and share your story with us. What I love about this session is it demonstrates the power of enterprise architecture to turn legacy into agility and modernize IT for compliance and business value. So let's dive into our chat, and let's try, as we talk and dialogue, to cover your challenges, your vision, and maybe how you turn some results into maybe some best practice for our audience. So with that said, let's start by highlighting some of the key challenges or pain points that you try to address when considering an enterprise architecture tool.
I think in order to really explain the pain points and challenges, I think I need to tell a bit more backstory about Folksam. And Folksam is over 100 years old, so it's a quite old company. And we were quite early adopters of IT. We actually implemented our first IBM mainframe computer back in 1956. So we've been running IT for almost 70 years, so quite some time. And over that kind of time, you build up quite a large tech stack. Combining that with multiple acquisitions that has their own tech stacks that we built upon ours, we have a quite large IT landscape. And our main pain spot or challenges was basically that we had this architecture in a lot of different systems. So it was really hard for us to really get the grasp or the full overview of what we really had and what it was supporting and how it was looking. And quite often the data was outdated, so it was kind of hard to do the analysis that we wanted. So when we started looking for a new AI tool, we wanted something where we can get the full picture of what we have, that somehow could help us increase our transparency of what it was, but also drive change faster so we could take better business decision really. So I think that was the background for searching for a new tool.
So it sounds like, you started with the kind of fundamental building blocks of application portfolio management and understanding your technical landscape. So how much of an impact did compliance have then in terms of driving your path forward and ultimately landing on RDoC and how it might help you solve that problem?
I mean, being one of the largest insurance companies and pension companies in Sweden, of course, comes with a lot of regulations. And I mean, worst case scenario, if we don't follow the regulations, we could lose our permit to operate. So with that said, we spent a lot of time and effort making sure that we are compliant with all the existing legislation, but of course also scanning the market for new legislations that we need to be ready for going forward. So the compliance part is really important for us at Folksam, keeping sure that we got control of our stuff.
So keeping on the theme of compliance, right, and regulations, obviously we're all aware of European Union's Digital Operational Resilience Act. So maybe talk us through how that may come about in your environment, how internal teams may have raised some concerns around DORA and how your organization might achieve compliance in that regard, and then maybe let's talk to some of the points on how you've gone about ensuring that your organization is compliant.
I think actually the timing of the DORA legislation, or Digital Operational Resilience Act legislation, was really good with us implementing RDoC. So it was almost the same time as we started the implementing project for the DORA legislation that we started the implementing of RDoC. And quite early on into the project, when we started to realize what DORA was all about and what we needed to do, we kind of saw that RDoC was a really good fit for getting control of what we needed to have control over in order to live up to the legislation. So in that sense, it was a perfect timing. And if you should somehow simplify a bit what DORA is all about, it's really about knowing your IT landscape, knowing your IT suppliers, and like what kind of business function your IT supplier and your IT landscape is supporting. So, and then of course making sure that you have the right kind of security implemented for those parts. And for that subject, I mean, RDoC is perfect. So what we did was really that we started to build up this map where we could solve. We started with all the applications and the underlying infrastructure. And then we started building up the entire process landscape, or we had it since before, but we integrated all the data into RDoC. And then when we started combining the processes with the applications, that we could quite easily see what happens if server X down here, quite deep down in the infrastructure, what happens is that goes down. We can see exactly what kind of processes that was impacted. So that was a major deal for us, enable to spread the word about RDoC, being able to show these kind of cases related to DORA. So that was a great platform for us to implement RDoC into the organization.
So being able to understand the regulation and its requirements and how that then impacts your broader organization, it sounds like a pretty fundamental way of utilizing RDoC to address in the context of DORA. So as you've mentioned, how has say for instance, the application risk management or the compliance assurance use case solution helped you identify actions for your IT risk team, and how has that led to positive changes being made to the environment? So
when we had done this mapping, where we had control, we could see basically, as I said before, what applications and what infrastructure is supporting our critical business processes and critical business function. We started to think about risk, and we had this qualitative risk model from before outside of RDoC. And of course, we had a lot of internal IT controls to make sure we had our risk under control. We started thinking about, is it possible for us to create a more quantitative risk model inside of RDoC, which could give us give us the overview in real time, like of what our different risk levels was for our different applications. So what we did was basically that we reached out to you at RDoC, of course, and asked you if you could help us with this case. So within 2 months, we had a prototype of risk model that you helped us build. And from that, we did some smaller adjustment, and today we have the model live. So what we can do right now is basically that we can see the risk levels for all of our applications in our application portfolio. And due to the fact that we have also, as I said before, created the reference or links between our application and our business processes, we can not only see the risk level at the applications, we can actually see is there any of our business critical processes that is supported by an application that has a too high risk score. So with that said, we can get a full control over our, how the risks are spread over our business processes as well.
Just picking on that piece a little bit, has that helped you articulate risk to the broader organization, and has it helped you raise the understanding of how regulation or risk in general impacts different parts of the business, so that business leaders and managers might be able to make better, more informed decisions?
Definitely, yeah. This model is not only for our internal IT security team. It's something that all of our systems owners are using as well. So basically, what we wanted to do, we wanted to create a transparent model, so we can drive an engagement for them to themselves learn more about how can I, as a system owner, reduce the risk of my applications. So what we did with this model was that not only did we show a risk score, we had a risk score and we had a threshold saying that every application above this risk score need to do something. You can't stay there, it's not allowed. So what we did was basically making that transparent to all the system owners or application owners. And what we did then was that we built upon this model. So we added, okay, these are all the risk parameters that are building up your risk score. Here is where you score the highest, and these are the actions you can take to lower your risk. All of this we did within the tool. Then we just made the data available to everyone. So that had a kind of big impact when the system or application owner could see, okay, this is what's making my score high, and this is the actual actions I can take to reduce the actual score. So yeah, that had a great impact. So we can see already now that many teams are working to lower their score using that matrix. So yeah.
Very good. So through addressing DORA, do you have some quantifiable results that you could share, where improvements have been made, or it's created change within the environment?
I think the biggest change we have is the awareness of, as I said before, is the awareness of our how good our resilience is within different applications. And as I said before, when you do that data transparent, no teams want to be above that thresh line or tolerance levels. So what we see now is that we see a lot of risk mitigation actions that's been taken. So we have lowered the risk all over the landscape, which is really, really fun to see. And it's not something that we push from above. Now they're coming from the teams and really asking, how do we do this to lower this risk? So yeah, it's have had a great impact.
So maybe more broadly, could you talk about some of the other results that you've achieved through implementing RDoC into Folksam?
Yeah, I have some more cases actually related to DORA that I can tell a little bit about, and some parts that DORA, except for having control over IT landscape, DORA also has some requirements when it's come to reporting to central authorities. So, and since we were or are one of the biggest pension and insurance companies in Sweden, we were invited for a test run of that reporting basically. So our team that's responsible for reporting started filling in all the templates that there was, and kind of quickly realized that this is going to take us forever if we're going to do this manual. So they reach out to us as well, as working with RDoC, and ask, is there any way you can help us collect the data we need and create more efficient reporting, basically. So we set up we set up a couple of servers in RDoC, which is for those who doesn't know RDoC well, that's a fantastic capability using in order to collect data around the organization. And on top of that, when we have the data, we build a couple of reports. So now I would say that 90% of the job that they do is automatically done through RDoC, and very simple to upload the files to the central authority, showing that we're compliant with or showing that we have control over our environment, basically.
Have you used any other tools to help complement your implementation or your pursuits to address DORA?
I mean, we have integrated RDoC with several other tools to making sure. For us, RDoC is like the center of the spider web, you can say. So we have, of course, our CMDB that we have integrated towards RDoC to get all the data regarding our applications and our underneath infrastructure. And then we have our process tool where we have all our business processes that we also integrated into RDoC. And then in RDoC we have done combine them with the references so we can see the full picture. And then we have integrated RDoC to our Azure Entra ID so that we get all the employees working at Folksam, so we have a good control that no application doesn't missing owner or there's processes missing owner and so forth, really making sure we have everything under control.
Very good. So I guess just coming back to kind of the more broader use of RDoC now in Folksam, outside of, say, the regulatory space, do you have any other examples of how you've utilized RDoC to solve other business challenges or maybe help you achieve other key objectives within the organization?
But I get almost daily, I get requests for different kind of reports or help with setting up a dashboard for different parts of the organization. So the word of RDoC has spread very well within Folksam. Big thanks to DORA, of course, but I think we get like daily requests of things they want help with. Our biggest issue right now in the team is that we don't have the manpower to really help implement all the different use cases that comes into us. But we have spent a lot of time working within the process area last year, not only connecting the dots towards the applications, but we have the whole structure of classifying processes built in within RDoC using calculated fields. So we in order for us, when we classify which processes that are essential or critical for us, that's all done within Folksam using the survey capabilities. So yeah, a lot of work related to our processes.
So has that allowed you to focus and improve processes across the board? Like, is that giving you the data and insight that you need to streamline certain inefficient areas of the organization? I know it's a byproduct of maybe some of the work that you're doing in risk and compliance, but obviously as you're kind of assessing the landscape and you dive into processes, potentially you're leading to the identification of new opportunities to streamline or to improve or maybe merge adjacent processes that might be, to remove waste, as it were. So maybe talk to us a little bit about how it's improved in that space.
Yeah, as you're saying, it's much easier to now to see, okay, what kind of, take for example, how many payment processes do we have for different kind of products, and we can quite easily see, okay, what kind of applications are supporting those payment processes, and that of course helps us to identify areas whereas we have applications serving the same purpose, going directly into the application rationalization use case. So it's a tool for us, not only for us, like finding improvements within the architecture, but of course also the business that can see hey, we do the kind of same thing here using different tools and have different processes for it. Why is that? How can we improve? So yeah, the transparency art gives us in this case is it helps us a lot to challenge what we have and find areas where we can improve basically.
Have you been able to, so going back to the risk piece, have you been able to, as processes are quite important to your organization, have you been able to extend the solution into the process level and kind of gain an understanding of where processes in Folksam have a higher level of risk and probably need more attention?
Yeah, I must say we have had our risk case live now for, I think it's 2.5 months, so it's still quite early on. But as I said before, we already now see that we're lowering the risk in a lot of different areas. But yeah, we have the possibilities with the data we have and the metadata that we have set up. We have the possibilities to do that kind of analysis that you're describing now, how we can aggregate risks within different process levels and see which process levels that has the highest risk. And that's of course is really important when we're driving change. Usually, I don't think that IT risk usually isn't the main focus for those working outside of IT. It's usually something that you discuss within IT, I think, for many companies. But with this transparency, the word is spreading. So it's much more easy to get like moving those kind of topics up on the ladder of prioritization. So it's really important for us.
So again, just circling back here, mindful of time, but circling back. So we spoke about how you first tried to gain an understanding of your application landscape as building kind of the fundamental building blocks, and then from there, you had a heavy risk focus as a result of EU DORA, and probably other regulations that are specific to your organization. And you've looked to create a quantifiable model and leverage the solutions to help you achieve that in RDoc. And you obviously using RDoc then as the central hub of information. We've talked about how that has impacted processes within the organization, but I maybe just take a second and think maybe how this has led to other, and as you mentioned, you're now getting inundated with requests to create dashboards and provide meaningful information to the organization in other areas. Maybe if you might just highlight one or two other areas that are outside of sort of risk and compliance and application portfolio management that you're seeing now a renewed or a new impetus to get information into RDoc so that you can start helping adjacent other areas of the organization.
Well, I think something that we started looking or will start looking at right now or just started is that the application and technology lifecycle management use case in order to get better control over our different application versions and software versions so that we can use RDoc for more long-term planning. I think that's really the next step for us. So we can create this 2 or 3 year old roadmap of everything we need to do related to lifecycle management, for example. And just having that, not only for us at IT, but everyone working outside of IT, if we can show them this is what we need to do at a minimum the next 3 years, instead of coming last second or coming half year before something will end of life, it's much easier to do the planning. So of course, I think that will help us a lot in our long-term planning. We also have you have the strategy to execution use case that we have on our roadmap going forward, starting working with. So we get everything, basically our strategic movements into RDoc as well, so we can see how well we are moving towards them.
Okay. So let's maybe think more broadly now. What are some of the best practices that you've discovered in building up your EA practice, and maybe using RDoc more effectively?
I think that, I mean, we have it as a principle at the company as well, but use standards, and Ardoc has a fantastic standard built in. In the beginning, I think we wanted to build our own meta model, a Folksam meta model, but afterwards, I think that we would have saved quite some time if we would have just went for the standard one, because now we're really close to the standard one anyway. We're leaning a lot against your standards, to be honest. I think your work, and I mean, Ardoc is a really flexible tool, so you shouldn't be afraid of testing. It's really easy to make changes or redo your meta model structure if it doesn't turn out as you want. So I think my recommendation to everyone listening in now is, don't be afraid to try out. Don't be too theoretical. Just start and get going, and you will see when you have the data and do the visualization if you've done it correctly based on the business achievements or the thing you want to achieve for the business.
Not very often that you have an enterprise architect talking about failing fast in order to move forward. So that's great and refreshing. So just to kind of summarize there, you've got, you use the solutions out of the box. They're a good guide to get you going rather than kind of inventing the wheel yourself. But in saying that, you're saying, don't be afraid to kick the tires a bit, trial and error, take the opportunity to try and extend and build upon what's being provided out of the box, as it were.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to try. It's the flexibility of the tool makes it so easy to just go back to how you had it before, or make additional changes. So
yeah,
let's try that.
So if you had any advice to offer people in our audience that are starting their Ardoc journey or considering Ardoc, maybe 2 or 3 things that you think would be useful for those people listening in today.
I think first of all, start small. Like find the use cases that triggers the right audience that can work as ambassadors. If you're gonna map your doing the use case for business capability modeling, for example, start with the most critical capabilities and map those out really well, and then when you have the ambassadors within those areas, everything will go so much smoother. So start small and build upon that. And then another tip I think is try to find use cases outside of IT to get those persons in as well early on. That helps a lot, I would say.
So I think we're entering into Q&A. So there's a few questions in the portal. So maybe if you could explain a little bit more about the risk model that you implemented, and how that is different from, or sorry, let's hear about your revised risk model and how Ardoc implemented that in Tool, or how you implemented that in Tool.
Yeah, so basically our risk model is built upon that we have something we call base risk. Base risk is, you can say, inherited risk that you can't really do much about. It could be example that you have a web page or web portal that are exposed to traffic outside of the company. Basically, that's something you probably need in order to sell your products or services. But of course, the risk level gets higher when you do that. So you have the base risk that is somehow inherited, and then so we have a couple of risk parameters that build up the base risk depending on how important the application is and or how critical it is for us as a company. And then we have something called actionable risk, and the actionable based risk is exactly as it sounds. It's risk parameters, whereas you can lower your risk if you take measures. So we have a couple of quite many actionable risk parameters, and depending on like what kind of risk measures you have implemented, you score either 0 or higher depending on how bad it is. Our model is built in a way so that we don't want as little as possible. We want to have like answers from a person. We're trying to find the data from the data sources. So we're going to the tool where we can find whether they have certain software installed, security software is installed in different places and so forth, and fetching that data directly into Ardoc to calculate the model. So we're trying to be not dependent on sending out, in this case, sending out service to application owners. Instead, we're trying to fetch the data from the real data sources to calculate the actual risk. So it's not people dependent. Then we have a threshold. So the risk model is calculating upwards. So it's just one scale going up. And basically, we have this threshold. So if you're above that threshold, you need to take actions. And then we have a space or a threshold, like where here you don't have to take action here and now. It's like voluntary, but you probably should take action quite soon, because we're lowering the threshold as we go as well. But right now in the early stage, we have a little bit higher threshold. I think we'll put it down going forward to continuously make sure everyone is at their toes and implement new features to make us more secure.
These thresholds, they're on the application or on the risks themselves?
The thresholds is set on the applications.
Right.
So we have, I don't know if you want me to go into detail into actual model, but we have a risk score case with a lot of risk parameters that we're connecting to each and every applications. And then we have on the reference lines, we have calculated fields that are looking at the parameters on the applications. And based on that, they're calculating a risk value in our model. Yeah. And then we summarize all of those reference values into each and every application. And summarizing those and comparing it against the tolerance levels.
So how do you, one of the questions here is, how do you work with increasing Ardoc engagement and usage outside of your architecture community?
There are, I mean, collecting data, especially at a company as Folksam, we work with, I mean, insurances is all about data, I would say, pension, of course, as well, but insurance is everywhere, even more. So a lot of people are collecting data. Many people puts it in spreadsheets today. With Ardoc, I mean, we showed them the possibilities of why do you keep this kind of data in spreadsheet when you can have it in Ardoc and using the survey functionality, and we can build a dashboard for you in order to see how much data you have collected, where you have data quality issues. So by showing, I think our main case is showing those situations where we collect data in spreadsheets and moving them instead into Ardoc. So I think that's one way of creating engagement. We're saving a lot of time for a lot of people.
So that kind of answers what is the biggest barrier that you've seen in trying to collect data in the organization. So, but yeah, I guess some other questions that I have. What were the biggest obstacles to achieving visibility and managing change effectively?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think it took some time for us to get the data in from the other systems. Unfortunately, we didn't have any of the systems that you have standard integration towards. So we had to use your APIs and they worked really well. However, the structure in the other core system, they weren't really built up in the same manner as Ardoc is. So we needed, it took some time for us to figure out how to solve those puzzles. But when we had done that, and now it's a walk in the park, I would say. Now we get all the data in from everywhere that we need. So now it's easy. But I think that was a bit tricky to get that working.
So maybe more broad or more generic type question would be, so now not necessarily in tool, but obviously you've got a diverse audience here in terms of skill sets and whatnot. And one of the challenges we often see is enterprise architecture as a practice within an organization. Companies have sometimes difficulty building up that enterprise architecture practice. So maybe you yourself in Folksam have kind of encountered this where, you know, as you were starting up and building an EA practice, what challenges did you face, and what did you do to help overcome those?
I think we've had it for quite some time in Folksam and long before I started, but I think if you're starting up an EA practice, I think the core part is showing like what business value can you give. I think that's the core part of the enterprise architecture. You need to be able to show the business values that you can help generate. Whether it's lowering cost, increasing efficiency, or whatever it could be, but you need to be able to show that. And I think the art of enterprise architects, it's about doing that in a simple way, so people not working within IT can understand IT and what it can give them.
So, in highlighting the fact that you probably need some way to demonstrate and shed light or shine a spotlight on the EA function and the value that it brings to an organization. Maybe a slightly different question would be, obviously that led to you implementing a tool, RDoC in this case. What were some of the initial concerns or hesitations you might have had in implementing an EA tool such as RDoC, and then how did you overcome and address those concerns?
I think I've been part of implementing AI tools before, and I think one of the problems we had back then was that it was a tool only for enterprise architects or architects in general. We wanted a tool for a broader audience that primarily it was not only for enterprise architects, it was for everyone to use. So we searched for a tool that was really simple to use and a low barrier to start working with, where RDoC was the perfect fit for that. So I think now I almost forgot your question. I don't know if I answered it, but yeah, I think that was something when we searched for a new EA tool, that we wanted a tool that was simple to use. And we also really liked the features that RDoC was data driven and not something you yourself drawing, and then the drawings are dependent on who's actually behind the steering wheel, or so to say. So that was something we liked as well. That is
so it's allowed you to work a little bit more collaboratively and take a standard approach to enterprise architecture within the organization.
Exactly.
You mentioned, and I'll circle back real quick, you did mention that you're now inundated or swamped with requests, right? So maybe talk to us now about how you use RDoC to maybe prioritize those challenges that are coming forward, and how do you increase the visibility or work through some form of change management in order to address the different requests coming in now for data?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely something we can be better at making that more transparent of how we do the prioritization. But I think that one part that I'm working with a lot right now is that I'm doing a lot of trainings in RDoC. So it is a very simple, or it's a flexible and simple tool to work in, and still so powerful and strong. So I mean, building your own report isn't that hard. So we do a lot of education within Folksam right now of how you can build your own dashboards and how you can find the data that you're searching for. So I think that's one part of it, that we already have a lot of data. It's all about being able to find it. So that's something we work with. And then I think when it comes to the use cases, it's a matter of how long we estimate it to be. We estimate to be able to implement the use case in comparison to how much value it will generate. So that's, can we do this quick? And it's kind of low value, but we can do it really quick. Yeah, then perhaps we should do it. Some other cases are really, we know this is going to take quite some time, but we can't really see the value, then it has to wait.
Yeah, as we're coming close to time here, I see that there's one or two questions, so we'll do our best to answer those offline. But I guess the last question I have would be, how do you measure the success of your EA program, and the value that you're now delivering to the organization?
So, really good question as well. I think that, I mean, we have this target architecture where we want to be in a couple of years. And with RDoC, we can really track how far have we gotten moving towards that target architecture. So I think that's one way of somehow measuring how far we've gotten. The other part is, of course, starting to measure, okay, but we have this target architecture for a reason. It's become, it's because we want to become faster or more secure, for example. So that's kind of the other part of the puzzle. And we're measuring that as well, not in RDoC at the moment, how long it takes for us to perform changes in our systems and how many changes we perform. But yeah, that might be something that we move into the system going forward. And then, of course, you have if we can lower our costs and delivering high quality to the people working within Folksam, yeah, that's a win, and that's something we can measure as well.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions we have. So just from myself, Alexander, thank you very much. And now I'll bring back Joy.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Sean. I think we've got maybe we have time for that. For this, there was a question about the architecture maturity score, Alexander, that I don't think we've covered. We've got 3 minutes. One of the guests, one of the viewers wanted to understand whether your architecture maturity score increased with the adoption of RDoC. And I don't think we covered that. Do you have a 20-second answer to that question?
The easy answer is yes, it did. It did.
Okay, we'll take that. Thank you so much. I think that was just a brilliant insight into Folksam's EA journey. And we talk so much internally at RDoC about ensuring transparency across the IT landscape for our customers, ensuring that the practice of enterprise architecture sits across the business and not in just one place. And so it is just so great to hear about this happening in real life from you directly, Alexander. You also said one of my favorite mantras, don't be afraid to try. So I love that. Applies to everything, including enterprise architecture. So with that, I think we've done well with time. So all that's left is for me to thank you, Alexander, to thank you, Sean, for both of you sharing your expertise, and then to thank everyone who joined us today. If you would like to continue the conversation, please do connect with us on LinkedIn or reach out at hello@rdoc.com, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can with answers. And we had a backstage team looking through any questions that came through. So if there is anything outstanding, we'll be sure to follow up. And then tomorrow, it's our final customer showcase session. And that will be with Victoria State Government. And that one promises to be a good one too. So goodbye for now. Thanks everyone for joining.